The village of Sebergham lies on the main road from Penrith to Wigton, a few miles south and west of Carlisle. If you've ever driven through here, you'll probably remember the steep drop down into the village and the climb back up on the other side. At the bottom is a narrow bridge over the River Coldew, built in 1689. It's believed the name Sebergham comes from the rushes that were grown on the marshy ground not far from the river. Back in the 12th century, this whole area was blanketed by Inglewood Forest. It was sometime in the middle of that century that a religious man called William Wastell came to live here, settling on dry ground at the top of the hill. In most accounts he's called a hermit, in some a monk, and there are several different variations of his name, but whatever the details, he cleared a section of the forest and built himself a small cottage with a little wooden chapel. He's said to have lived to an extreme old age, living by the labour of his hands and the fruit trees he planted. It's known that he was living here in 1188, under the reign of Henry II, and some believed that he had arrived during the reign of Henry I. King John granted him the land that he was living on, and William died around the end of John's reign, or the early years of Henry III. He must have made a big impact on the locals, and they were drawn to his preaching, for when he died, he bequeathed the land to the Priory of Carlisle, on the condition that the spiritual needs of the inhabitants of the area were met by the Priory from then on. But by this point in the early 13th century, the cottage and chapel were in a poor state, so they were taken down, and the first stone church was built where they had stood. The core of that building is still standing today, though much has changed over the years since. The only obvious features from that 13th century building are the lancet windows in the chancel. There are 2 on the north side and 3 on the south, though one of these has been blocked up inside. 2 others were also blocked up in 1775, but have since been restored. There are also 2 doorways in the exterior of the north wall, but these are both now blocked up. The other possible survival from the 13th century building is inside the church. On the north side of the altar is an old square-topped font. This is no longer in use, having been replaced in Victorian times by the larger and more elaborate one that now stands by the door at the west end of the church. The first major changes to the building that we know about were in 1774. The roof of the nave was raised by 4 feet. The church extended at the west end and a gallery added there. In 1785 the chancel was again repaired. In 1825 further changes were made. The most obvious of these was the addition of a small tower at the west end, with an external stairway to the bell-ringing chamber. This tower was not popular with the locals, and there was considerable opposition to it. When it was completed, they pinned a statement of protest to the church door. The floor of the church under the seating was up till this point mainly earth, full of holes and covered in dirty, worn mats. So the church was given a new stone floor, and the box pews were replaced with benches. The old north doorway was blocked up, replaced by an entrance in the west through the new tower. By 1878, the church had developed problems arising from the rough cast rendering that had been added in 1825. The walls were suffering from damp, and the rendering had to be removed, along with a number of monuments that were attached to the walls outside. A new pulpit was also installed around this time. The next major work was carried out in 1905. The nave was given a new roof, and the windows replaced or restored. Inside, the gallery was removed, and in its place they added an oriel window in the west wall connecting to the ringing chamber in the tower. New seating was installed in the nave at this point. Pevsner describes it as being like North German Baroque. There's only one piece of stained glass in this church, on the north side of the nave. It's dedicated to Mary Dixon, who died in 1922, and depicts the tale of the Good Samaritan. The organ was installed in 1952 at the West End. It's a locally built instrument and is quite unique. 4 years later, it was converted to electric power, though it still retains the ability to be pumped by hand as well. The banner at the front of the church was made by Carol Hine, and it's made from scraps of material donated by every household in the parish. On the front is Mary, to whom the church is dedicated. She has a pocket sewn into her dress, into which prayer requests can be placed. On the rear of the banner are found various aspects of Cumbrian life. There are a number of notable memorials in this church. The oldest is the Denton Memorial to the south of the altar, inside the blocked-up third window on that side. It's to Thomas Denton and dated 1616. To the north side of the altar is a memorial to the Reverend Josiah Relf, curate and schoolmaster, and known as the Poet of the North. When he died in 1743, he was buried with a simple stone, in the expectation that a suitable memorial would soon be erected. But it wasn't until some 50 years later that the Reverend Jonathan Boucher of Epsom finally arranged for one to be installed. There's a brass plate on the north side of the nave remembering the local men who fell in the First World War. The Lychgate, to the north side of the church, is a memorial to Captain William Adamson, who was killed in 1916 in Mesopotamia, now Iraq. Above the font inside is a brightly coloured mosaic of Christ with the little children. It's a memorial to Ruth Payne, who died of the measles in 1931, aged just 5 years. The main door to the church was installed in 1963 by Lang's Building Company. It's in memory to 2 members of the family. The company was established locally and built their first house in Sebergham. They also carried out the 1905 construction work on the church. But the finest monument in the church is the memorial to Thomas Watson, who died in 1823. It's a white, oval low relief of the 3 fates, and it's carved by his son, Musgrave Lewthwaite Watson. To appreciate the full beauty of the carving, it needs to be lit obliquely. The carving is based on a painting by Fuseli of the 3 witches from Macbeth. Musgrave was a renowned sculptor who grew up in Sebergham. His work can be seen on one side of the base of Nelson's Column in Trafalgar Square, and his own memorial is in Carlisle Cathedral, just inside the main entrance. This little church at Sebergham, tucked away off the main road, has a rich and interesting history, and is open for visitors daily.